The soldiers arrived before breakfast. By noon, the Sakakibara house no longer belonged to the Sakakibara family. Move aside. The samurai's hand rested on his sword. Otsune did not move. Behind her, 7-year-old Jūnosuke clutched the back of her kimono so tightly that his fingers had gone white. The courtyard was full of armed retainers. Storehouse doors had been torn open. Ledgers lay scattered across the ground. Servants who had bowed to the Sakakibara family only yesterday were already slipping through the rear gate with whatever they could carry. At the center of the chaos stood Otsune, one unarmed woman with a child behind her. The samurai stepped closer. That boy is the son of a condemned traitor. Otsune raised her chin. He is 7. That does not change his blood. Jūnosuke trembled. Otsune felt it through the cloth at her back. The samurai drew his sword. Move. No. He stared at her. Perhaps he had expected pleading. Perhaps he had expected a servant to kneel. Otsune did neither. She pulled Jūnosuke against her side. He is my son. A few soldiers laughed. The samurai did not. You are his nurse. Otsune looked directly at him. 7 years ago he lived because of the milk in this body. Her voice did not shake. If that does not make him mine. She opened one arm and placed herself fully between the sword and the boy. Then cut me down first. The laughter stopped. Jūnosuke buried his face against her. And for one brief moment, Otsune was no longer standing in a ruined samurai house. She was back in a small room 7 years earlier, holding another baby, her own. His name had been Taro. He lived for 73 days. Otsune remembered the number because after he died, numbers were easier than feelings. 73 days. 9 tiny cloth diapers, 3 nights of fever, and 1 final morning without crying. The sickness had passed through the village quickly. It began with an old woman near the river, then 2 children, and then 5 households. By the time the temple bell began tolling for the dead almost every day, Otsune had stopped asking whether the disease would reach her house. It already had. Her husband had died the previous winter. Taro was all she had left. On the final night, Otsune held him against her chest until dawn. His skin burned and then cooled far too quickly. Otsune rubbed his feet, called his name, and pressed her ear against his chest, but there was nothing. When the women from the neighborhood came to help prepare the body, Otsune would not let go. One of them finally whispered, "Otsune, he is cold. I know. Then let us take him. I know." But she still held him. At last she folded the little cotton robe herself. She tied it closed, placed a wooden dog toy beside him, then watched other hands carry her son away. That night, Otsune sat alone. The house was silent, yet her body still did not understand what had happened. Milk soaked through the front of her robe. She woke in pain. For one confused moment, she reached beside her bedding. Taro, nothing. The pain in her chest was sharp enough to make her gasp, but there was no child to feed. Otsune pressed a folded cloth against herself and sat there until morning. That was how Lady Shino's messenger found her. The mistress of the Sakakibara house has given birth. Otsune said nothing. The messenger stood awkwardly outside her door. The child is not feeding. Still nothing. They have tried 2 women already. Otsune finally looked at him. What does that have to do with me? The man has hesitated. He knew about Taro. Everyone did. You still have milk. Otsune's face hardened. Leave. Otsune, leave. He bowed and went. An hour later, someone else came, not a servant. Lady Shino herself could not leave her bedding, but her elderly attendant arrived carrying a small purse. Otsune did not even look at it. I said no. The attendant set the purse down. I was told not to offer you money first. That made Otsune look up. First, my lady said you would hate that. Despite herself, Otsune almost laughed. She did not. The attendant continued. The baby has eaten almost nothing since last night. Otsune looked toward the folded cloth beside the wall. Taro's cloth. She had not moved it. That is unfortunate. Yes. Silence. Then the attendant said quietly, My lady heard about your son. Otsune's jaw tightened. Do not speak of him. I won't. The woman bowed. She only asked me to tell you one thing. Otsune waited. She will not ask you to forget him. The words entered the room and stayed there. Otsune looked down. The pain in her chest returned. Outside, somewhere beyond the houses, a baby began crying. It was not Taro. It was another child crying somewhere beyond the houses. Otsune shut her eyes, but the sound continued, thin, hungry, angry, and unmistakably alive. At last she stood. "Take me there." Lady Shino looked almost as pale as the bedding beneath her. The birth had been difficult. Her hair lay loose around her face. Beside her, a maid held a red-faced infant who had been crying so long that almost no sound remained. Otsune stopped at the doorway. Her hands went cold. The baby turned its head. Its mouth opened. For one terrible instant, Otsune did not see the child in front of her. She saw Taro instead, searching for her, hungry and alive. She turned away. "I can't." Lady Shino did not order her to stay. That mattered, she only said, "I understand." Otsune looked back. Shino's eyes were wet. "If you leave, no one here will blame you." The baby made a weak sound. Otsune's fingers curled. Shino continued, "But if you can help him." She stopped. Otsune waited. Shino did not say anything else. There was no appeal to duty, no mention of money, and no command from a samurai household to a common widow. Otsune walked across the room. "Give him to me." The maid did. The baby was lighter than she expected, frighteningly so, and he twisted against her as he cried. Otsune sat, her hands shook as she opened the front of her robe. "Come on." The baby turned his face away. Otsune swallowed. She adjusted him. "Come on." His mouth found her. Then he drank. The room became silent. Otsune stopped breathing. The child's small hand closed against her skin. His crying ended, his body relaxed, and Otsune's face crumpled. She bent over him before anyone could see. A tear fell into his hair, then another. Lady Shino looked away. No one spoke. When the child finished, Otsune held him against her shoulder. He gave one small sigh, then fell asleep. Otsune stared at him. "What is his name?" Lady Shino answered. "Jūnosuke." Otsune touched one finger to his cheek. "Jūnosuke." The baby slept. That evening Otsune tried to hand him back. He woke and began screaming. The maid took him. He screamed harder. Lady Shino tried. No difference. Otsune held out her arms. He stopped almost immediately. Lady Shino stared. Otsune stared too. "This is troublesome," Otsune muttered. Shino laughed weakly. It was the first laugh anyone had heard from her since the birth. Otsune remained. At first Otsune meant to remain only a few days. A few days became another week, and then another. Jūnosuke gained weight. His skin lost its grayness. He began sleeping for longer stretches. Before long, Otsune could tell what Jūnosuke needed simply from the sound of his crying, whether he was hungry, cold, wet, angry, or simply lonely. Lady Shino recovered slowly. She was kind to Otsune, but she never pretended the arrangement was simple. One evening, she found Otsune sitting beside the sleeping child. "You miss him." Otsune did not ask who she meant. Shino sat beside her. "Does holding Jūnosuke make it worse?" Otsune looked at the baby. "Sometimes." "Then why stay?" Otsune was silent for a long while. Finally, "Because leaving would make something else worse." Shino nodded. Neither woman needed to explain. The years passed. At 1, Jūnosuke learned to walk by holding Otsune's fingers. At 2, he refused to sleep unless she sat outside the room. At 3, he began calling for her whenever he fell. At 5, he discovered that Lady Shino could be persuaded by tears. Otsune could not. At 6, he tried to hide sweet bean cakes beneath his bedding. Otsune found them. "How? You left crumbs." "I did not. You are sitting on one." Jūnosuke stood. A crushed cake was stuck to his robe. He looked at it, then at Otsune. Perhaps it climbed there. Otsune stared at him. From the veranda, Lady Shino covered her mouth to hide her laughter. Jūnosuke grew. So did the bond no one in the household quite knew how to name. He had a mother. Everyone knew that. Lady Shino loved him fiercely, but when he woke from nightmares, he called for Otsune. When he scraped his knee, he ran to Otsune. When he was punished for avoiding his lessons, he complained to Otsune. And when Otsune told him to return to his tutor, he complained about Otsune too. It was an ordinary life. Until the ledgers arrived. Sakakibara Masanobu worked in the domain's grain office. He was not a powerful man, but his signature mattered. Rice moved through the domain because men like Masanobu counted it. Village levies, storehouse receipts, emergency grain. shipments intended for years of poor harvest. Masanobu was good with numbers. That was why he noticed the problem. A village north of the castle was recorded as having received 60 sacks of relief rice. The village headman's receipt showed 36. Another village had supposedly received 40. It had received 22. Masanobu checked the seals, then checked the dates. Something was wrong. He brought 3 ledgers home. That night he spread them across the floor. Lady Shino watched him. "What is it?" Masanobu tapped one entry. "This rice existed on paper. And?" "It never reached the village." Shino's face tightened. "Could it be an accounting error?" "One error, yes." He opened another book. 5. Another. 12. He sat back. "Someone is stealing grain from hungry villages." From the corridor, Otsune heard him. She had been carrying folded robes. She stopped. Masanobu looked toward the door. "Otsune," she entered. "My apologies." "No matter." He closed the books. "June asleep, finally." Did he read? He stared at the same page until I threatened to sit beside him all night. Masanobu smiled. Then his expression disappeared. "Do not mention these ledgers to anyone." Otsune looked at the books. "Yes, my lord." As she turned to leave, Lady Shino opened a small lacquer box beside her. Inside lay a ring, not especially large, but finely made. The Sakakibara crest had been worked into the metal. Shino removed it. Masanobu said something too softly for Otsune to hear. Shino wrapped the ring in cloth. For such a small piece, it seemed strangely heavy when it touched her palm. Then Shino hid it inside her sleeve. Otsune thought nothing more of it. Not then. 3 days later, armed men surrounded the house. The charge was not merely theft. That would have been survivable. Masanobu was accused of falsifying domain accounts, diverting grain, and conspiring with men who had spoken against the domain's senior retainers. The evidence was devastating. Money was found in a storage chest behind his office. Ledgers bearing his seal recorded shipments that had never existed. A letter in his handwriting appeared to discuss hiding missing grain. Masanobu stared at it. "I did not write this." The official holding the letter smiled. "It carries your hand. It imitates my hand. It carries your seal. My seal was used. Convenient." Masanobu looked around the room. For the first time, fear entered his face. Not fear of punishment, understanding. Someone had prepared this carefully. He turned toward Lady Shino. "Take June." That was as far as he got. The soldiers seized him. The household collapsed within hours. Servants disappeared. A steward Otsune had known for 6 years slipped silver bowls into his clothes and ran. Another man took a horse. One maid climbed the rear wall. Otsune found Jūnosuke crouched behind a water barrel. He was not crying. That frightened her. "June." He looked up. "Otsune." She ran to him. Only then did he begin to shake. She pulled him into her arms. "I'm here." "Where is father?" She could not answer. "Where is mother?" A scream came from the inner rooms. Jūnosuke flinched. Otsune stood. "Stay behind me." They crossed the courtyard. That was when the samurai stopped them. "Move aside." Otsune pulled Jūnosuke behind her. The sword came free. "That boy is the son of a condemned traitor." Otsune looked at the blade, then at the child. "No, he is my son." The confrontation did not save the Sakakibara house. Nothing could. But it bought Jūnosuke time. A senior officer ordered the soldier to sheath his sword. "The boy is under sentence. You do not carry it out here." Otsune did not thank him. She kept one arm around Jūnosuke. Then someone called her name. Otsune. Lady Shino was crawling from the corridor. Her robe was stained with blood from where she had fallen during the search. Otsune rushed to her. "My lady." Shino caught her wrist. Her other hand was closed around something. The ring. She forced it into Otsune's palm. Otsune felt that same unexpected weight again. "Take it." Otsune stared. "My lady." "Hide it." "What is it?" Shino looked at Jūnosuke. The boy was crying now. Something his father wanted him to have. When he is old enough. Otsune closed her fingers around it. Shino grabbed her sleeve. "Do not lose it." "I won't. Promise me. I promise." Shino's grip tightened. Then she looked past Otsune at her son. "You gave him life once." Otsune's eyes filled. Shino whispered, "I am asking you to do it again." Her hand fell. "Mother?" Jūnosuke rushed forward. Lady Shino did not answer. Otsune pulled the boy against her before he could touch the blood. He screamed for his mother until his voice broke. Otsune held him through all of it. By sunset, Masanobu had been condemned. The household property had been seized. The Sakakibara name had been struck from the domain rolls. And Jūnosuke, 7 years old, had become the surviving son of a disgraced house. The official read the decision the following morning. The boy will be sent under supervision to the western coastal settlement. Otsune listened. The sentence concerns Sakakibara Jūnosuke alone. The official looked at her. You are free to leave. Otsune looked at the boy. He had not spoken since his mother died. The official continued. You have no legal obligation to accompany him. Otsune tied the small bundle at her side, then tucked Lady Shino's ring beneath her robe. Then write my name beside his. The official frowned. What? I'm going with him. You understand where he is being sent? Yes. You may never return. Otsune looked at Jūnosuke. Finally, the boy spoke. His voice was almost inaudible. Why? She crouched in front of him. Why what? Why are you coming? Otsune looked at his swollen eyes, then tapped his forehead with one finger. Because you would forget to eat without me. Jūnosuke stared at her. For the first time since his mother's death, something in his face moved. Not a smile, not quite, but close. Otsune stood. Come. They walked through the gate together. Behind them stood the ruined Sakakibara house. Ahead was exile. Neither of them knew that someone had already given orders to make sure the boy never reached it. The first day of exile was almost silent. Jūnosuke walked beside Otsune with his head lowered. 2 guards followed several paces behind them. A third rode ahead. No one spoke to the boy unless it was to tell him to walk faster. By midday, the castle town had disappeared behind the hills. By evening, even the shape of the Sakakibara residence was gone from the horizon. Jūnosuke stopped once and looked back. There was nothing to see. Still, he stared. Otsune waited beside him. One of the guards shouted, "Keep moving." Jūnosuke did not. Otsune touched his shoulder. Come. He looked at her. Will father know where we are? The question nearly broke her. She answered carefully. Your father knew you were alive when they took him. That isn't what I asked. Otsune said nothing. Jūnosuke understood. He turned away. They continued walking. The road was cruel to a 7-year-old child. By the second morning, blisters had opened on Jūnosuke's feet. By the third, he was limping. The guard captain noticed. Faster. Jūnosuke tried. His sandal slipped. He fell to one knee. The captain reached for him. Otsune stepped between them. He can walk. Then make him. He is 7. He is sentenced. That does not make his legs longer. The captain glared. Otsune bowed before the anger could become something worse. Give me a moment. He spat into the dust. 1. Otsune crouched up. Jūnosuke shook his head. I can walk. I did not ask. She turned her back. He stared at her. Otsune up. Reluctantly, Jūnosuke climbed onto her back. Otsune stood. His weight dragged against her shoulders. 7 years earlier, he had weighed almost nothing. Now his legs hung past her waist. He was no longer the starving infant she had once held against her breast. But to Otsune, the difference did not matter. The captain laughed. You plan to carry him all the way to the sea. Otsune adjusted Jūnosuke's legs. No. Good. I plan to carry him until he can walk again. The captain stopped laughing. That night they slept in a storage shed behind a post-station inn. The paying guests had rooms. The guards slept under the eaves. Otsune and Jūnosuke were given a patch of floor that smelled of straw, horse sweat, and damp wood. Dinner was a cold lump of barley rice. A few pickled greens, nothing else. Otsune broke the barley in half, then looked at Jūnosuke. She gave him her portion too. He frowned. That is yours. I ate earlier. When? At the kitchen. Jūnosuke stared. You were with me. Otsune paused. I ate quickly. You are lying. She looked offended. I am an adult. That does not make it true. For a moment, Otsune almost smiled, then she pushed the food toward him. Eat, Jūnosuke did. Slowly. He left one piece. Otsune noticed. You missed some. I am full. You are also lying. Jūnosuke looked at her. They stared at each other. Then Otsune picked up the last piece, broke it in half. She ate one. He ate the other. No one said anything more. Late that night, Jūnosuke fell asleep with his head against Otsune's lap. Otsune could not. The shed wall was thin. Voices carried from outside. 2 guards were drinking near the kitchen. At first she ignored them. Then she heard Jūnosuke's name, not supposed to arrive. Otsune went still. Another voice answered. "You are sure?" "That is what the message said." "From whom do you want to keep your head?" Silence. Then, "The mountain road is narrow tomorrow." Otsune's hand tightened around Jūnosuke's blanket. A fall there would not surprise anyone. The men laughed quietly. Otsune looked down. Jūnosuke slept. His face looked younger when he slept. For 7 years, she had worried about fever, falls, bad food, winter cold. She had never imagined she would have to protect him from men paid to make his death look like an accident. Otsune slowly reached beneath her robe. Her fingers touched Lady Shino's ring. "Do not lose it." She closed her hand around it, then looked toward the shed door. The guards were still talking. Tomorrow. The mountain road. Otsune did not wake Jūnosuke. She sat there until the voices stopped. Then she began to think. The next morning, she bought nothing. That surprised the guard captain. At every previous stop, Otsune had tried to spend 1 or 2 copper coins on food. This time, she kept her purse tied beneath her sash. The captain noticed. "Saving money?" Otsune bowed. "We have little left." He shrugged. "You won't need much where you are going." She looked at him. He smiled. That was enough. They left the post station before sunrise. For the first 2 hours, the road was busy. Farmers, porters, a group of pilgrims, 2 merchants with a pack horse. Otsune stayed close to them whenever she could. The guards repeatedly ordered her forward. She obeyed slowly. By late morning, the traffic thinned. Then the road began climbing. The path narrowed between dark cedar trees. A steep slope fell away to the right. Jūnosuke looked down once. Otsune pulled him toward the inside. "Watch your feet." The guard captain rode ahead, then stopped. "There is a shorter path." Otsune looked where he pointed. A narrow track left the main road and disappeared through the trees. No cart marks, travelers. No reason to use it. The captain looked at Jūnosuke. "We go this way." Otsune bowed. "Yes." Jūnosuke looked at her. She did not look back. That worried him more than if she had refused. The side path grew steeper. The forest closed around them. The second guard moved behind Jūnosuke. The captain rode ahead. Otsune counted the men. 3. She counted what she had. A cloth bundle, a water gourd, a walking stick, a small purse. "No weapon," Jūnosuke whispered. "Otsune, keep walking." "Where are we going?" "Walking." "That is not an answer. Today it is." The captain stopped beside a bend in the path. Beyond him was an open stretch of rock. The drop below disappeared into mist. He dismounted. "Rest." Otsune did not. One guard moved toward Jūnosuke. Otsune stepped between them. The man frowned. "What?" "My sandal strap." He looked down. Nothing was wrong with it. Otsune untied the small purse from beneath her sash, then deliberately dropped it. Coins spilled across the stones. Copper rolled everywhere. 1 silver piece bounced once, twice, then spun toward the slope. The youngest guard's eyes followed it. Otsune kicked the purse hard. The rest of the coins scattered down the embankment. "What are you doing?" The guard lunged. So did the second. For one instant, no one was watching Jūnosuke. Otsune grabbed him. "Run." They ran back toward the main road. Behind them, the captain shouted, "Stop!" Jūnosuke stumbled. Otsune pulled him upright. "Run!" Footsteps crashed through the trees. The guards were coming. The main road was still too far. Jūnosuke gasped, "They'll catch us!" Otsune heard voices ahead. Many voices. She looked through the trees. Pilgrims. The same group they had passed earlier. Otsune dragged Jūnosuke toward them. "Help!" The pilgrims stopped. A priest turned. Behind Otsune, the captain appeared with one hand on his sword. He saw the crowd. Stopped. Otsune immediately fell to her knees. "My apologies." The captain stared at her. She bowed deeply enough that her forehead almost touched the ground. The boy became frightened and ran. The priest looked from Otsune to the armed guards. Then at Jūnosuke. The child was shaking. The captain's jaw tightened. He could not kill the boy here. Not with 10 witnesses. Not with a priest. Not after Otsune had publicly framed the incident as a frightened child running from the road. Finally he said, "Get up." Otsune obeyed. The captain leaned toward her. His voice was quiet. "You are clever." Otsune lowered her eyes. "No, sir." He smiled without warmth. "Be careful. I always am." He knew she was lying. This time she did not care. That night, Jūnosuke could not sleep. They were staying beneath the open side of a temple storehouse. The guards had been forced to keep them near other travelers after the afternoon incident. Jūnosuke whispered, "You knew." Otsune was repairing his sandal. "Knew what?" "They wanted to kill me." Her hands stopped. He watched her. "You knew?" "Yes." "Why? I don't know. Because of father, probably." Jūnosuke looked down. "If I die, will they stop?" Otsune put the sandal aside. "Stop what?" "Hunting us." She stared at him. He was 7. But exile had already begun pulling childhood out of his face. Otsune reached over and tapped him hard on the forehead. "Ow. Do not say stupid things." "I was asking." "You were talking as if dying would be useful." Jūnosuke rubbed his forehead. "It might be." Otsune's expression changed. She grabbed his shoulders. "No." He blinked. "Listen to me." Her voice was low. "Your father died. Your mother died. You are still here." Jūnosuke looked away. Otsune tightened her grip. "You do not get to throw away the life they could not keep." The boy's eyes filled. Otsune softened. "And you certainly do not get to throw away the life I have carried halfway across this country." Jūnosuke gave a weak laugh. "Halfway." "Do not ruin the speech." He wiped his eyes. For a moment he looked 7 again. The guards did not try again. Perhaps the witnesses had frightened them. Perhaps whoever had ordered the murder decided the coast would finish the job. Otsune did not know. What she did know was that the captain stopped smiling at her. That was fine. She had never needed him to like her. They reached the sea 5 days later. Jūnosuke had never seen it before. He forgot his grief for almost an entire minute. He stood at the harbor staring. "It doesn't end." Otsune followed his gaze. "No. Where does it go?" "Farther than I know." A boatman laughed nearby. "That is one way to answer." Then Jūnosuke saw the boat meant for them. His face changed. "That?" The boatman stopped laughing. "Yes, it was old, narrow. The hull had been repaired in several places." Otsune looked toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond it waited the settlement where Jūnosuke would live. Perhaps for years. Perhaps forever. She touched the hidden ring beneath her robe, then stepped aboard. Jūnosuke discovered quickly that he hated the sea. Within an hour his face was grey. Within 2 he was vomiting over the side. A Totsun sat behind him holding his robe. "I'm dying." "No, I am." "You are seasick." "Same thing." "You are still complaining, therefore you are alive." Jūnosuke groaned. Otsune took off her outer robe and wrapped it around him. "You'll be cold." "I am not cold." "You're shaking." "I am furious." "That must be it." The boatman looked back at them. "You two always argue like this," Otsune answered. "Yes," Jūnosuke answered. "No." The boatman laughed. Hours later, when the laughter had ended and darkness covered the water, Jūnosuke fell asleep against Otsune's chest. The wind was brutal. Otsune sat with her back toward it. Her hands went numb. She did not move. The island settlement appeared the following afternoon. Grey rock, a narrow shore, and a scattering of low houses came into view, with almost no trees large enough to block the wind. Jūnosuke stared at it. "That is where we live." Otsune looked. "Yes, it looks terrible." "Yes," he turned to her. "You are supposed to say something better," Otsune considered. "It will look less terrible after we clean it." Jūnosuke sighed. That was not better. People gathered near the landing. News traveled quickly in small settlements. A disgraced samurai's son had arrived. A few villagers stared with curiosity. Others turned away. One man muttered loudly, "Traitor's blood." Otsune heard. So did Jūnosuke. She took his hand. Another woman whispered, "He is only a child." The man answered, "Children grow." Jūnosuke's fingers tightened. Otsune squeezed them once. Walk they did. The guard assigned to receive them led them beyond the village, past the fishing huts, past a patch of poor fields, up a slope where the wind grew stronger. Then he stopped, there. Jūnosuke stared. The building barely deserved the word house. One side leaned. The roof had 2 visible holes. The paper on the sliding doors was gone. A rat disappeared beneath the floorboards. Jūnosuke looked at Otsune. She looked at the house. The guard handed her a wooden tag marking their assigned residence. Food is your problem. Work is your problem. You may not leave the settlement without permission. Then he left. Jūnosuke waited. Otsune put down the bundle, rolled up her sleeves. Sit on that stone. He blinked. What? The sunny one. What are you doing? Making this less terrible. By sunset, the rat had been evicted. The worst debris was outside. A torn mat covered the cleanest section of floor. Otsune had blocked one gap in the wall with cloth from an old underrobe. The roof still leaked, the wind still entered. But there was now a place where Jūnosuke could lie down without touching dirt. He looked around. You said you would make it less terrible. Yes, it is still terrible. Otsune sat beside him. Less, Jūnosuke considered. Perhaps, then his stomach growled. The sound filled the room. Both of them looked at each other. Otsune stood. Wait here. Where are you going? To find food. I'm coming. No. Why? Because someone must guard the palace. Jūnosuke looked around the ruined room. This, Otsune slid the door shut. Do not insult our estate. For the first time since leaving home, Jūnosuke laughed. Otsune carried that sound with her, all the way down the hill. The first 3 houses refused her. At the 4th, the owner shut the door before she could finish speaking. At the 5th, a woman threw salt across the threshold after hearing the name Sakakibara. Otsune bowed. Thank you for your time. The woman stared. You are thanking me? Yes, for throwing salt at you. You did not throw the bowl. The woman closed the door. At the edge of the village, Otsune finally found an elderly widow cleaning barley. The widow looked at her. You are the nurse. Yes, the traitor's boy. Otsune's expression hardened. The boy. The widow studied her, then went inside. She returned with a lump of cold barley rice and a spoonful of miso wrapped in leaf. This is old. Otsune accepted it with both hands. It is food. You have money? No. Then tomorrow you work. What work? The widow pointed toward the shore. Shellfish. Otsune bowed. I'll come before dawn. Jūnosuke was exactly where she had left him. He pretended he had not been afraid. Otsune pretended to believe him. She warmed the barley with water, added the miso. The result was thin enough to drink. She placed the bowl in front of him. Eat. Jūnosuke looked at the single bowl. What about you? I ate in the village. He stared. Otsune stared back. No, what, you used that lie already? Otsune frowned. It worked last time. No, it did not. Jūnosuke pushed the bowl toward her. Otsune pushed it back. Eat. You first. June. Otsune. She narrowed her eyes. He copied the expression. It was not convincing. Otsune sighed. She took one spoonful, then handed it back. Jūnosuke took one, then another. They passed the bowl between them until nothing remained. That night, Jūnosuke slept with his head on Otsune's lap. Outside, the sea wind struck the broken house. Inside, Otsune looked at the boy and thought of everything they had lost. They had lost a name, a home, a mother, a father, their safety, their money, and their status. Almost everything, almost. She placed one hand over the ring hidden beneath her robe, then looked at Jūnosuke. At dawn, she would go to the shore and work for food. After that, she would find paper, then a brush, then books. Because surviving exiles was no longer enough. If Jūnosuke was ever going to escape the name Traitor's son, he would need something stronger than Otsune's arms. He would need to learn how to fight with the one weapon she herself did not possess. Words. Otsune was awake before the temple bell. Jūnosuke was still asleep. She left half of her outer robe over him, tucked the edge beneath his shoulder, and stepped outside. The wind off the sea hit her immediately. She pulled the door shut, then walked down toward the shore. The old widow was already there. You're late. Otsune looked toward the dark sky. The sun isn't up. The shellfish do not care. The widow handed her a basket. Follow me. The work looked easy. It was not. When the tide withdrew, the villagers moved across the exposed rocks with practiced speed. They knew where to step, where the shells hid, which pools were safe. Otsune knew none of it. Within an hour, she had slipped twice. By midday, the skin around her fingernails had split. Salt entered every cut. She kept working. The widow glanced at her hands. You'll ruin them. They will heal. Then you'll ruin them again. Probably, the widow snorted. You were a servant in a samurai house, a nurse. That explains it. What? You have the hands of someone who thinks stubbornness is a skill. Otsune looked at her basket. It was barely half full. The widow's was overflowing. Today it is. When Otsune returned, Jūnosuke was sitting outside the house. He had found a piece of charcoal. On a flat board, he had written the same character over and over. Otsune stopped. What is that? Jūnosuke looked up. Father's name. The character was crooked, then less crooked. Then almost correct. Otsune set down the basket. You have been doing that all morning? Yes. Did you eat? Jūnosuke hesitated. Otsune closed her eyes. I leave for half a day. I forgot. Of course you did. She entered the house, found the barley she had left for him untouched, and returned with it. Jūnosuke looked at her basket. Did you find food? I found work. That is not food. It becomes food. She sat beside him. He noticed her fingers. What happened? Rocks. Your hands are bleeding. They have been informed. Otsune, what? He reached for her hand. She pulled it away. Eat. Jūnosuke did not. Instead, he tore a narrow strip from the cleanest edge of an old cloth. Otsune stared. What are you doing? Give me your hand. No, you bandaged me when I fell. You were injured. So are you. This is different. Why? Otsune opened her mouth. Nothing useful came out. Jūnosuke held out his hand. Reluctantly, she gave him hers. His first knot was terrible. The second was worse. By the third finger, he was improving. Otsune watched him. You are wasting cloth. I am practicing. On my fingers? Yes. She almost told him to stop. Instead, she let him finish. The next weeks gave them a routine. Otsune worked wherever someone would pay her. At low tide, she gathered shellfish. On fishing days, she helped untangle nets. When boats returned, she carried baskets from the shore. She cleaned fish, dried seaweed, patched straw mats. Once she spent an entire afternoon scraping barnacles from the bottom of a boat for 2 measures of barley. Nothing paid well. Everything mattered. Jūnosuke worked too. Not because Otsune wanted him to, because he refused not to. He carried small baskets, collected driftwood, fetched water. But every evening, Otsune made him stop, read. At first, they had only what he remembered from his old lessons. Jūnosuke wrote characters in dirt, on scraps of wood, on flat stones. When charcoal ran out, he used a burned stick. Otsune could recognize numbers, a few simple characters, not enough to teach him. That bothered her. So she listened. When Jūnosuke repeated something incorrectly, she could not correct the words. But she could correct the effort. You rushed. I did not. You always rub your nose when you are pretending. Jūnosuke immediately removed his hand from his nose. Otsune pointed. Again. He read the passage again, slower. One morning, a traveling seller spread used goods on a mat near the harbor. Old bowls, needles, a damaged writing box. 2 brushes with worn tips and books. Jūnosuke saw them, then looked away. Otsune noticed. She said nothing. That evening, she counted their money. Not enough. The next morning, she went to the shore earlier. That evening, she accepted another job mending fishing nets by lamplight. 3 days later, she returned to the seller. How much? He named a price. Otsune stared at him. For an old book. For a useful old book. It has water stains. So does the sea. You still live beside it. Otsune picked it up. Several pages were damaged, but most were readable. How much without the cover? The seller laughed. It comes with the cover. Then the cover is too expensive. They argued for 10 minutes. Otsune won by exhausting him. She carried the book home inside her robe. Jūnosuke was repairing a sandal. Otsune dropped the book in front of him. He stared, then looked at her. What is this? A turnip. Otsune, it is a book. I know. Then why ask? Jūnosuke picked it up carefully. His expression changed when he saw the writing. This is a copybook. Is that bad? No, he turned a page. It has classical passages. Can you read them? Some. Then learn the rest. Jūnosuke looked at her. How much did this cost? Not much. He knew immediately that she was lying. He looked at her fingers. Fresh cuts crossed the older ones. You cannot even read it. Otsune shrugged. You can. A voice behind them said, That is an unusual reason to buy a book. Otsune turned. A man stood several steps away, travel-worn kimono, a patched haori. A writing case hung from his belt, but no sword. He appeared to be somewhere in his 40s. Otsune moved slightly in front of Jūnosuke. What do you want? The man lifted both hands. Nothing. Then you have succeeded, he smiled. I heard what you said. That was your first mistake. The man looked at the book, then at Jūnosuke. You can read. Jūnosuke nodded. How well? Well enough. Otsune looked at him. Jūnosuke corrected himself. Not well enough, the stranger laughed. What is your name? Jūnosuke hesitated. Otsune. She studied the man. He did not look like an official. He also did not look like a fisherman. Why? Curiosity. Curiosity is expensive. Then perhaps I should pay. He reached into his sleeve. Otsune immediately stiffened. The man pulled out a folded piece of paper. Nothing else. He handed it to Jūnosuke. Read that. Otsune did not take her eyes off him. Jūnosuke unfolded the paper. He began reading, slowly at first, then more confidently. It was a merchant's notice concerning the shipment of salt. Halfway through, Jūnosuke stopped. What? The stranger asked. Jūnosuke pointed. This number is wrong. The man's expression changed. Wrong? The total. He read the figures again. These amounts make 47. The total says 52. The stranger took the paper, looked at it, then back at Jūnosuke. You noticed that while reading? Yes. Otsune folded her arms. He notices numbers. The stranger studied the boy for another moment, then bowed slightly. My name is Sakuma Genbei. Otsune waited. Nothing else. No family, Genbei smiled. Everyone has one somewhere. That was not my question. No. Otsune disliked that answer. Genbei seemed pleased by this. He turned to Jūnosuke. Keep reading. Then he walked away. Jūnosuke watched him. Who was that? A man who asks too many questions. He seemed kind. That is how people manage to ask too many questions. Jūnosuke looked down at the merchant notice. He let me keep this. Otsune took it. She could not read most of the words, but she could see the columns of figures. Then use the back for practice. By the second winter, the villagers had stopped calling Jūnosuke the new boy. Some had found other names. Not all of them were kind. Traitor's son. Jūnosuke kept walking. He was 9 now, tall for his age, too thin. 3 boys followed him from the well. Did you hear me? Jūnosuke carried 2 buckets. Otsune had told him to bring them straight home. He tried. 1 boy stepped in front of him. My father says your father stole rice. Jūnosuke stopped. He did not. My father says he did. Your father is wrong. The boy shoved him, water spilled. Jūnosuke looked at the bucket, then at the boy. Pick it up. The boy laughed. Make me. Jūnosuke hit him. By the time Otsune arrived, all 3 boys were involved. One had a bloody nose. Jūnosuke's lip was split. A bucket lay upside down in the road. Otsune grabbed Jūnosuke by the back of his robe and pulled him away. Enough. He said father was a thief. I heard, he said. I heard. The other boys ran. Jūnosuke tried to follow. Otsune tightened her grip. Let go. No, he deserved it. Probably. Jūnosuke stopped fighting. That was not the answer he expected. Otsune picked up the bucket. Home, she washed his lip. Jūnosuke sat angrily beside the brazier. You should have let me hit him again. No, he called father a traitor. I know, he lied. Otsune wrung out the cloth. Was your father innocent? Jūnosuke looked at her. Yes. Can you prove it? His anger faltered. What? Can you prove it? I know he was innocent. That was not my question, he told mother. Can you prove it? Jūnosuke looked down. No. Otsune placed the wet cloth in his hand. Then hitting a fisherman's son will not restore his name. Jūnosuke said nothing. Otsune reached behind her. The old copybook lay there. She placed it between them. Learn. Jūnosuke looked at the book. Learn what? Everything you can. That will not change what people say. No, Otsune tapped the book. But one day it may change what they can prove. Jūnosuke stared at her. Otsune could not have explained domain law. She could not read Masanobu's old ledgers. She could not tell one formal petition from another. But she knew one thing. A fist could hurt a boy. It could not change a record. Your father knew numbers, she said. Jūnosuke looked up. Yes. Then learn numbers. He wrote reports. Learn to write. He read Chinese texts, then read those too. Jūnosuke almost smiled. You make it sound easy. Otsune stood. I did not say easy. She picked up the overturned bucket. I said learn. That night, Jūnosuke read until the lamp oil was nearly gone. Otsune pretended to sleep. She heard every page turn. 3 years passed. The ruined house changed. Not much, enough. The roof no longer leaked above the bedding. The broken wall had been repaired with boards scavenged from an old boat. A second mat covered the floor. There was a shelf. On it stood 6 books. 6 Otsune knew because she counted them often. Not because she could read them, because she knew what each had cost. Otsune knew what those books had cost. 2 days gathering shellfish, 5 nights repairing nets, 1 winter hauling firewood, and 3 weeks helping a merchant dry kelp. Jūnosuke knew too. That was why he never treated a page carelessly. At 12, he began reading letters for fishermen whose sons worked on the mainland. At 13, he helped the old widow calculate what a rice merchant owed her. At 14, he caught a traveling trader adding the same fee twice. The trader became angry. Jūnosuke showed him the numbers. The trader became less angry, then embarrassed, then paid. Otsune watched from the doorway. Afterwards, she said, "You enjoyed that." "No, you did. He was cheating them. You still enjoyed it." Jūnosuke tried not to smile, failed. That autumn, Sakuma Genbei returned. Jūnosuke recognized him immediately. Otsune did too. "You again." Genbei bowed. "You remember me." "I remember problems." "I am flattered." He looked toward Jūnosuke. The boy was now 14, still reading. Jūnosuke gestured toward the shelf. Genbei raised an eyebrow. 6 books. 7. Otsune turned 7. Jūnosuke froze. Genbei smiled. Otsune slowly faced the boy. "Where is the 7th? Jūnosuke pointed toward his bedding. Otsune pulled out a thin book. "Where did this come from?" "I borrowed it." "From whom?" "The temple keeper." "You did not tell me. You were working." "That is not an answer." Genbei cleared his throat. "I can return later." Otsune pointed at him. "Stay out of this." "Yes, Mum." Jūnosuke looked at Genbei. "You see what I live with." Otsune smacked the back of his head. "Not hard." Genbei laughed, then his expression changed. He took out a small account sheet. "Would you look at something for me?" Jūnosuke accepted it. The figures were more complicated this time. Rice purchased, rice transported, losses recorded during shipment, fees. Jūnosuke sat. Read again. Several minutes passed. Otsune grew impatient. "Well," Jūnosuke ignored her. Finally, he pointed to 3 lines. "These losses are impossible." Genbei crouched beside him. "Why?" "The same boat appears twice." Genbei looked. Jūnosuke continued. "Here it supposedly lost 8 sacks in bad weather." He pointed farther down. 3 days later, the same shipment is recorded arriving intact. Genbei's face became very still. "You are certain?" Jūnosuke nodded. "Unless there were 2 boats with the same name, carrying the same number of sacks under the same merchant." Genbei took the sheet back. "And if someone did that deliberately?" Jūnosuke answered. "They could remove rice and blame the loss on transport." Otsune looked from one to the other. "What is this?" Genbei folded the paper. "A merchant dispute." Otsune did not believe him. Jūnosuke did not either. Genbei stood. "You have become good with accounts." Jūnosuke's expression hardened. "My father was good with accounts." Genbei met his eyes. "I know." Silence. Otsune stepped forward. "How?" Genbei smiled faintly. "I remember the Sakakibara case. That is not what you said the first time we met. You did not ask. I asked who you were. And I told you." "Part of it." Genbei bowed. "Then perhaps I am still paying for my curiosity." He left before Otsune could stop him. Jūnosuke watched until he disappeared. "He knows something." Otsune said, "Yes, what?" "I don't know. Should we find out?" Otsune looked at him. "No." Jūnosuke frowned. "Why?" "Because you are 14. I am almost 15. Then in several months you may ask again." The local administrator arrived 2 weeks later. His name was Mizuno Heizo. He had governed the settlement for 4 years. No one liked him. Everyone bowed anyway. Mizuno collected the domain levy, then collected additional harbor fees, then storm repairs, then security contributions. The storms never improved. Neither did security. That year the fishing had been poor. Several families could not pay. Mizuno did not care. His men went house to house taking what they could. A cooking pot, a fishing net, stored barley, even a winter robe. Mizuno's men took whatever they could. Then they reached Otsune's house. Mizuno looked around. This is all. Otsune bowed. We have little, I can see that. One of his men opened the grain jar, almost empty. Another found 3 copper coins. Mizuno sighed. Pathetic. Then he saw the shelf. 7 books, those. Jūnosuke stood no. Otsune immediately stepped in front of him. Mizuno looked amused. No? Jūnosuke clenched his fists. Otsune said, he means the books are of little value. Mizuno picked one up. Then you won't miss them. Otsune's face changed. Take the barley. Mizuno glanced at the nearly empty jar. There is hardly any. Take my robe. Old, the cooking pot, cracked. Then take my work for a month. Mizuno laughed. I already take everyone's work. He handed the book to his man. Take them. Otsune moved. Wait. Mizuno looked at her. She reached beneath her robe. Her fingers found the cord she had worn for 7 years. The ring hung there. Lady Shino's ring. Do not lose it. Otsune closed her eyes, then pulled it free. Jūnosuke saw it. His face drained. No. Otsune ignored him. She held the ring out. Mizuno stared. Even in the poor light, the workmanship was obvious. He took it, turned it over, saw the Sakakibara crest. His eyes flicked toward Jūnosuke. Interesting. Otsune held out her hand. The books. Mizuno smiled. You bargain boldly for someone with nothing. The books. He tossed one back onto the shelf. Then another. His men returned the rest. Jūnosuke grabbed Otsune's sleeve. You promised. She did not look at him. Mizuno slipped the ring into his sash. A sensible trade. Then he left. Jūnosuke waited until the men were gone. He turned on Otsune. You promised my mother. I know. She told you never to lose it. I know. And you gave it to him. Yes, for books. Otsune looked at the shelf. Yes. Jūnosuke stared at her as though he did not know her. That ring was hers. And you are alive. That does not make it yours to give away. Otsune flinched, only slightly. Jūnosuke saw. He was too angry to stop. You had one thing she trusted you with. Silence. The words landed harder than he intended. Otsune looked toward the empty cord in her hand. Then she placed it on the floor. You are right. Jūnosuke's anger disappeared. He had expected an argument. Not that, Otsune continued. I promised her. Her voice was quiet, and I broke that promise. Jūnosuke looked down. But if I had to choose again between her ring and your books, she looked at him. I would make the same choice. Why? Otsune pointed at the shelf. Because a dead woman's ring cannot save you. Then she touched the first book she had bought him. This might. Jūnosuke's eyes filled. Otsune stood. Your mother asked me to keep you alive. She paused. I do not think she meant only breathing. Jūnosuke could not answer. That night, he took every book from the shelf. He cleaned the dust from each cover. Then he began reading. 6 more years passed. At 20, Jūnosuke no longer looked like the frightened boy who had arrived from the mainland. He was taller than Otsune, stronger. His handwriting was precise. His arithmetic was better than that of most merchants in the settlement. Fishermen brought him contracts before signing them. Widows brought him tax notices. When a boat owner suspected a trader had cheated him, he came to Jūnosuke. Sometimes people even paid, usually in food. Otsune accepted fish, barley, lamp oil. Once a chicken, Jūnosuke refused the chicken. Otsune accepted it anyway. It hates me. It is a chicken. It waits outside the door. So do tax collectors. That does not make them welcome. Otsune laughed. She laughed more now. But age had begun to show in places Jūnosuke did not like. Her hands had thickened at the joints. Cold mornings made her limp. Her hair had gone grey at the temples. Jūnosuke noticed every change. Otsune pretended he did not. One evening, Jūnosuke was copying a petition for a fisherman when a boy ran into the house. Mizuno's men are at the harbour. Jūnosuke looked up. So, they're taking another levy. Otsune stopped sorting dried seaweed. For what? The boy shrugged. New storehouse. Jūnosuke laughed once. There was no humour in it. The storehouse they collected money for last year? Otsune looked at him. Finish the petition. They're stealing. Finish. You know they are. Yes, and everyone just bows. Otsune's voice sharpened. June, he stood. For 13 years, people have called my father a thief. He pointed toward the harbor. That man steals in front of everyone, and they call him administrator. Sit, no. Otsune watched him. There it was, the thing she had feared. What she saw was not weakness but anger. Jūnosuke had learned to read, to count, to write. But somewhere along the way, he had also learned how much injustice could be hidden beneath correct seals and polite bows, and he hated it. Otsune stood. Knowledge is a blade. Jūnosuke looked at her. A blade swung in anger cuts the hand holding it. Then, perhaps someone should finally bleed. Otsune's face changed. Jūnosuke knew immediately he had gone too far, but pride stopped him from taking the words back. He walked out. 3 days later, Mizuno Heizo held a poetry gathering. It was meant to impress a visiting merchant. Local men were encouraged to submit verses. Jūnosuke had no intention of attending. Then he saw the theme posted outside the meeting hall. A bountiful harvest. He stared at the words. Behind him, 2 fishermen were discussing how much barley Mizuno's men had taken that morning. Jūnosuke entered. He took a brush and wrote. The poem was elegant. That was the problem. Everyone understood it. It spoke of a granary that grew fat while the village bowls grew empty, of rats wearing official robes, of a harvest counted twice, once for the farmer, once for the thief. For several seconds after it was read aloud, the room was silent. Then someone laughed. Someone else tried not to. Mizuno Heizo did neither. He looked at the paper. Who wrote this? Jūnosuke stepped forward. It did. Mizuno studied him, then smiled. Of course, his eyes narrowed. The traitor's son. Jūnosuke did not bow. Mizuno folded the poem. Your father forged records. My father found forged records. The room went silent again. Mizuno's smile vanished. Careful. Jūnosuke remembered Otsune. Knowledge is a blade. He should have stopped. He did not. Why? He looked around the room. Will you steal my words too? Mizuno raised one hand. 2 men seized Jūnosuke. Only then did he understand. Otsune had not been telling him to remain silent forever. She had been telling him to choose the moment when speaking could actually win. And this was not that moment. Mizuno looked at the poem, then at Jūnosuke's hands. So these are the hands that write so cleverly. Jūnosuke struggled. Mizuno pointed. Take him outside. One of the men asked, what punishment? Mizuno looked again at Jūnosuke's fingers. Something that will improve his poetry. By the time Otsune heard what had happened, Jūnosuke was already tied in the administrator's courtyard. And Mizuno had ordered his writing hand placed on the punishment block. By the time Otsune reached the administrator's compound, a crowd had already gathered outside the gate. No one tried to stop her. They only moved aside. That frightened her. People made room like that when something terrible was already happening. Otsune pushed through. Then she saw Jūnosuke. He was kneeling in the courtyard with both arms bound. His right hand had been stretched across a low wooden block. 2 guards held his shoulders. Mizuno Heizo sat beneath the veranda roof, holding Jūnosuke's poem between 2 fingers. He looked almost bored. Again. A guard raised the wooden staff. Jūnosuke clenched his jaw. The blow came down across his back. His body jerked, but he made no sound. Otsune stopped breathing. June. His head lifted. For one moment, relief crossed his face. Then fear, not for himself, for her. Otsune, go home. She was already moving. A guard stepped in front of her. Stay back. My son is there. He is under punishment. I can see that. Then go. Otsune tried to pass. The guard shoved her back. She stumbled. Jūnosuke struggled against the men holding him. Do not touch her. Mizuno looked up. The smallest smile appeared on his face. So, he folded upon the nurse. Otsune bowed quickly. My lord, you raised this mouth? I did. That explains much. Then punish me. The courtyard went quiet. Jūnosuke stared at her. No, Otsune did not look at him. Mizuno leaned forward. What did you say? I raised him. She bowed lower. If he failed to learn respect, that failure belongs partly to me. Jūnosuke pulled against the rope. Otsune, she ignored him. Please release his hand. Mizuno looked at the block, then at Jūnosuke's fingers. You seem very concerned about that hand. He earns his food by writing for people. That is precisely why I chose it. Otsune's face tightened. Mizuno noticed. He enjoyed that. Perhaps if he cannot write, he will stop insulting men above him. Jūnosuke spat blood onto the ground. Men above me should try behaving like it. Otsune shut her eyes. Mizuno's expression hardened. There you hear him. Otsune turned sharply. Be quiet. Jūnosuke stared at her. Do not give him another word. He is stealing from everyone. I know. You told me to learn so no one could silence me. I told you to learn. Her voice cracked across the courtyard. I did not tell you to throw yourself beneath a cart, simply because you had finally learned its name. Jūnosuke went still. Mizuno laughed. You should have taught him that earlier. Otsune faced him again. I am trying now. Too late. He pointed toward Jūnosuke's hand. The guard lifted the mallet. Otsune moved. She did not think. She threw herself across Jūnosuke's arm. The mallet stopped inches above her shoulder. Everyone froze. Mizuno stood. Move. No, Jūnosuke's voice broke. Otsune. She pressed both hands around his. Mizuno descended from the veranda. You have become troublesome in your old age. Then punish the troublesome one. You think this is devotion? Otsune looked up. No. Mizuno frowned. This is simply my place. He laughed once. Your place? Yes, she covered Jūnosuke's hand with her own, between the blow and him. Something moved through the crowd, a murmur. Mizuno heard it. That irritated him. He turned toward the guards. Fine. Otsune's eyes narrowed. Mizuno smiled. If she wants his punishment, give it to her. Jūnosuke went white. No. Otsune remained still. Mizuno looked at her. 10 strokes. A guard hesitated. Mizuno continued. Across the back. Jūnosuke shouted. No. Otsune turned to him. You cannot. I can. You are not doing this. Otsune gave him the same look she had given him at 7 when he refused medicine. You are tied to a post. Jūnosuke almost laughed from sheer disbelief. Then his face twisted. Otsune, please. She leaned closer. This is the last time. What? The last time my body pays for your anger. Jūnosuke stopped. Otsune held his gaze. Remember that. They untied Jūnosuke from the block only to bind Otsune in his place. She lowered herself to her knees. The courtyard stones were cold through her clothing. The guard carrying the staff looked uncomfortable. Otsune noticed. Do your work. He swallowed. Yes. Jūnosuke was to kneel several steps away. 2 guards held him. Otsune looked at him. Do not watch. He shook his head. Do not look at me. No, the first blow landed. Otsune's hands tightened against the wood. Pain spread across her back like fire. She inhaled, slowly. The second came. Jūnosuke pulled against the guards. Stop! Mizuno did not move. The third. Otsune's vision blurred. The fourth. Her breath escaped between her teeth. Jūnosuke shouted her name. The fifth came harder. Otsune almost cried out. Instead, she bit the inside of her cheek. Metallic blood filled her mouth. The crowd had become completely silent. The sixth. Her arms shook. The seventh. Jūnosuke stopped struggling. That frightened Otsune more than his shouting had. She turned her head slightly. His face was wet. Otsune, she tried to smile. It failed. The eighth blow fell. Jūnosuke broke. Mother. Everything stopped. Not the punishment, not the guards. Otsune, her eyes opened. For 20 years, almost everyone had called her nurse. Otsune, old woman, servant, never that. Jūnosuke stared at her. Mother, please. The ninth blow came. Otsune's body folded forward. She did not hear the 10th. When she woke, she was home. The roof above her was familiar. So was the smell of dried seaweed hanging from the beam. For several seconds, Otsune did not know why she could not move. Then pain reminded her. She breathed carefully. Someone was sitting beside her, Jūnosuke. He was washing a cloth in a bowl of water. His right hand was swollen but intact. Otsune stared at it. Your hand. He looked up. You are awake. Your hand. It is fine. Let me see. He held it out. She examined every finger. Only bruises. No broken bones. Otsune closed her eyes. Good. Jūnosuke's face changed. You almost died. I did not. The healer said, I am speaking. That does not mean you are well. Otsune opened one eye. You have become very argumentative. Jūnosuke looked away. That is your fault, probably. Silence. Then Otsune remembered the courtyard. Mother. She looked at him. Jūnosuke felt it. His ears turned red, neither said anything. Otsune decided to let him suffer, for now. That night her fever rose. Jūnosuke stayed awake. He replaced cloths, boiled water, fed the lamp. He had no medicine worth naming. A neighbor brought mugwort. The old widow brought dried herbs. Someone else left a small jar of oil outside the door without knocking. The same villagers who had once called him Traitor's son now came quietly with what they had. Jūnosuke accepted everything. Pride had become too expensive. Near midnight, Otsune began speaking in her sleep. Taro, Jūnosuke froze. He had heard the name only once, years earlier. The son she had lost. Otsune's hand moved across the bedding as if searching for something. Jūnosuke took it. Her fingers closed around his. Taro, then June. His throat tightened. I'm here. Otsune relaxed. Jūnosuke sat beside her until dawn. The next morning his anger returned, not the wild anger from the poetry gathering, something colder. Mizuno had beaten Otsune, taken Lady Shino's ring, extorted the village, and for years everyone had endured him because he held authority. Jūnosuke looked at the knife used to cut dried fish. For one moment, killing Mizuno seemed simple. Go at night, wait near the road. One strike. Done. Otsune's voice came from the bedding. And then, Jūnosuke turned. Her eyes were open. What? You have the face you had when you broke the fisherman's son's nose. I was 9. You have not improved. Jūnosuke said nothing. Otsune looked toward the knife, then back at him. And then? He understood. If I killed him, yes. Jūnosuke's jaw tightened. He would be dead. And you? He did not answer. Otsune did. Executed. Silence. Your father's name? Jūnosuke looked away, still disgraced. The villagers. He said nothing. Another administrator replaces him. Her breathing was shallow. Still, she continued. And everything I did, Jūnosuke looked at her, becomes nothing. That is not fair. No, you should not have had to suffer for me. No, I should have protected you. Otsune almost laughed. You have confused the order of our lives. I am not 7 anymore. Then stop behaving like 7. The words hurt, because they were true. Jūnosuke sat. What am I supposed to do? Otsune looked toward the shelf. The books. 7 had become more than 20. Some borrowed, some purchased, some copied by hand because they could never afford originals. Use those. He stared. You want me to write another poem? Otsune gave him a look of such disgust that he almost apologized. Evidence. The word came from the doorway. Jūnosuke turned. Sakuma Genbei stood outside. Older now, more grey in his hair, same patched haori, same irritating calm. Otsune frowned. You, Genbei bowed. I heard you had been injured. People talk too much. They do. He looked at Jūnosuke. You especially. Jūnosuke stood. You knew this would happen? No. Then why are you here? Genbei stepped inside. Because your poem was foolish. Jūnosuke's face hardened. And useful. That stopped him. Genbei sat. Mizuno seized 3 households' grain yesterday. He has done worse, yes. And now half the settlement is angry enough to speak. Jūnosuke frowned. They have been angry for years. Anger and testimony are different things. Genbei removed several folded sheets from his sleeve. He placed them on the floor. Receipts. Shipping records. Levy notices. Jūnosuke immediately recognized the format. He sat. Where did you get these? From people who have decided they are tired of losing rice. Otsune watched Genbei. Who are you? He looked at her. This time he did not dodge. I copy records for merchants. Otsune waited. And? I sometimes copy records for men who want to know why official records do not match merchant records. Jūnosuke looked up. Which men? Genbei's expression changed. A senior retainer in the eastern part of the domain. Otsune's eyes narrowed. Why would he care about this island? He does not. Genbei touched one of the documents. He cares about missing grain. Jūnosuke stopped breathing. Genbei continued. Grain has been disappearing from domain accounts for more than 20 years. Otsune's face went pale. Jūnosuke stared. My father. I did not say that. You remembered his case. Yes. And you tested me with shipping records when I was 14. Yes. Why? Genbei looked directly at him. Because your father was accused of doing exactly what someone else is still doing. Silence. Jūnosuke looked at the papers. Then you believe he was innocent. I believe the records surrounding his conviction make no sense. That is not the same thing. No. Jūnosuke hated the answer. That was why he trusted it. Genbei leaned forward. If you want your father's name restored, do not ask me to believe him. He tapped the records. Show me. For the next 6 days, Jūnosuke barely slept. Otsune hated this. She complained constantly. He ignored her constantly. That was how she knew he had become an adult. Genbei brought records in small bundles. Not enough to attract attention. There were harbor fees, grain levies, boat manifests, and storehouse receipts. Jūnosuke compared names, dates, seals, quantities. At first, nothing connected. Then he noticed a recurring pattern. Look. Genbei moved closer. Jūnosuke pointed. This merchant. Takaya? Yes. He appears in 3 years of shipping. So? Jūnosuke pulled another record. And here, different village. Merchant. Same page. And here. Genbei frowned. That is not unusual. No. Jūnosuke pointed to the handwriting beside the totals. This is. The characters differed slightly, but the numbers had the same peculiar shape, the same narrow 7, the same hooked 3. Jūnosuke had spent years copying other people's accounts. He knew how hands repeated themselves. The same clerk wrote these. Genbei looked again. Across 9 years? Yes. And Jūnosuke pulled out the older copy Genbei had once shown him, the one with the impossible boat loss. Here too, Genbei stopped. The room went silent. Otsune, lying nearby, watched both men. What? Jūnosuke looked at her. The same accounting hand appears in records from different offices. That sounds bad. It may be. Genbei looked at Jūnosuke. Or it may be coincidence. Jūnosuke nodded. He did not become angry. That pleased Otsune more than anything else. What would prove it? Genbei asked. Jūnosuke thought. The original warehouse books. Genbei shook his head. Mizuno controls them. Then someone who worked there. There was a clerk was dismissed last year. Why? Drinking. Where? Genbei smiled. I hoped you would ask. The former clerk lived in a fishing hamlet 2 hours north. His name was Hachibei. He was drunk when they arrived. He remained drunk for most of the conversation. At first he denied everything. Then Jūnosuke showed him the copied numbers. Hachibei's face changed. I did not write that. No. Jūnosuke pointed to another column. You wrote this. Hachibei stared. How do you know? The 7. The man blinked. Jūnosuke demonstrated. You finish yours with an upward hook. Hachibei looked at his own fingers. Genbei said nothing. Jūnosuke continued. The false totals are written by someone else. Hachibei's mouth tightened. I know nothing. Jūnosuke folded the paper. Then we are done. Genbei looked at him. So did Hachibei. Jūnosuke stood. Come. They reached the door before Hachibei said, Wait. Jūnosuke stopped. The clerk swallowed. I changed numbers. Genbei turned. Under whose orders? Hachibei stared at the floor. Mizuno. Jūnosuke's heartbeat changed. How many years? 4. Only 4? Hachibei looked up sharply. What do you mean? Jūnosuke crouched. The same pattern existed before Mizuno arrived. Hachibei's face drained. He knew something. Genbei saw it too. Who? Hachibei whispered. You are asking about old men. Ask anyway. Hachibei looked at Jūnosuke. There was a name. What name? Kuroda. Jūnosuke stopped. Genbei did not. Kuroda Genzaemon. Hachibei nodded. Otsune had never told Jūnosuke that name. She had barely known it herself, but Genbei did. That mattered. Jūnosuke stared at him. You know him. Genbei's face had become unreadable. Kuroda served in the grain office when your father did. The room seemed to shrink. Hachibei whispered. I heard Mizuno say once that the old method had worked before. Jūnosuke leaned closer. What old method? Make the rice disappear. Hachibei swallowed. Then make the clerk responsible disappear with it. They returned after dark. Jūnosuke felt lighter than he had in years. For the first time, they had a witness, a name, a link. Genbei wrote Hachibei's statement. Hachibei pressed his seal beneath it. Jūnosuke read the statement twice. Then once more, Otsune watched him. You look happy. He looked at her. We have him. No. Jūnosuke frowned. We have a witness. You have a beginning. Genbei smiled. I like her. Otsune glared. No one asked. Jūnosuke rolled the statement carefully. We can take this to the domain. Genbei nodded. If we add the warehouse originals, then we get them. Otsune opened her mouth. Jūnosuke raised one finger. Not by writing poetry. She shut it again. Good. For the first time in 13 years, hope entered the house without disguising itself as survival. It lasted until morning. A boy came running from the northern hamlet. Hachibe was gone. His door had been broken, the room searched. And sometime before dawn, the administrator's warehouse had caught fire. By sunrise, nearly every original grain ledger they needed had become ash. Jūnosuke stood outside the burned storehouse as black paper drifted through the air. One fragment landed at his feet. A column of numbers ended halfway down the page. Then nothing. Genbei arrived behind him. Neither spoke. Jūnosuke looked toward Mizuno's compound. This time he did not reach for a weapon. He asked, "What do we still have?" Genbei looked at him, then smiled very slightly. "Now you are asking the right question. What do we still have?" Genbei looked at the burned warehouse. Smoke drifted through the broken roof. Around them, Mizuno's men carried buckets they no longer needed. The fire had done its work. "We have copies," Genbei said. "Copies can be challenged. Yes, Hachibe is gone. Yes, I have 2 men searching the northern shore and the fishing sheds. If he is still alive, I intend to find him. The originals are ash." "Yes," Jūnosuke turned toward him. "You are remarkably calm. I am old. That is not the same thing." "No, but it helps." Genbei bent and picked up a charred piece of paper. Most of the writing was gone. Only 3 numbers remained. He rubbed the ash between his fingers. Mizuno burned his own records. He burned ours. No. Genbei looked at him. His. Jūnosuke frowned. Genbei continued. "A frightened man destroys evidence." He let the paper fall. "A very frightened man destroys records he is legally required to preserve. That proves he feared something. It does not prove what." Jūnosuke looked at the ruins. A month earlier, he would have wanted to drag Mizuno into the road and beat the truth from him. This time he asked, "What would?" Genbei smiled faintly. "A record he could not burn." Otsune was sitting upright when Jūnosuke returned. She should not have been. The healer had told her to remain flat for several more days. She had ignored him. Naturally, Jūnosuke opened the door. "Lie down." Otsune looked at him. "Good morning to you too. Lie down." "I have been lying down. You are sitting." "I grew tired of lying." "That is how lying down works." Otsune stared. Jūnosuke stared back. Finally, she lowered herself onto the bedding. Slowly. Pain crossed her face. She hid it badly. Jūnosuke noticed. He said nothing. Otsune looked behind him. "Where is Genbei?" "Still near the warehouse." "And Hachibe gone?" Her expression changed. "The records." "Burned." Otsune closed her eyes. For a moment neither spoke. Then she asked, "What will you do?" "I don't know." She opened her eyes again. Jūnosuke sat beside her. "We have copies, we have patterns. We have Hachibe's written statement, but without him there to confirm it." He shook his head. "It may not be enough." Otsune watched him carefully. "You are not angry. I am furious. You hide it better. That is apparently what you wanted. It is a beginning." Jūnosuke almost smiled. Then Otsune's fingers moved toward her neck, toward a cord that had not hung there for 6 years. She stopped. Jūnosuke noticed. "What?" Otsune was silent. "What is it?" "Your mother's ring." His face hardened. "Mizuno still has it." "I know. You traded it for the books." "Yes. You do not need to remind me. I was reminding myself." She looked toward the shelf. More than 20 books now. Some old, some copied. Some held together with thread. Jūnosuke had replaced himself. Otsune's eyes lingered there. "Your mother said something when she gave me the ring." Jūnosuke waited. "She said your father wanted you to have it when you were old enough." "You told me that." "Yes." "She also made me promise never to lose it." Jūnosuke looked away. Otsune continued. "I thought it was because it belonged to your family." "Perhaps it was. Perhaps." She frowned. "But your mother was dying." Jūnosuke looked back. She had lost her husband, her house, everything. Otsune touched the empty cord, and still, that ring mattered enough for her to make me promise. Jūnosuke understood. "You think there is something special about it?" "I think I should have asked that question before giving it to Mizuno." "No." Otsune frowned. "No, you chose the books." He looked at the shelf. You were right. For once Otsune had no answer. Jūnosuke stood. I'm getting it back. Her answer came immediately. No. He looked at her. You just said. I said the ring may matter. Yes, I did not say you should break into Mizuno's house. I did not say that either. You were thinking it. Jūnosuke stared. How do you know? You still rub your nose. His hand was touching his nose. He lowered it. Otsune almost smiled. Find another way. Jūnosuke sat again. For the next hour he tried. There was no other way. Genbei returned after sunset. Jūnosuke told him about the ring. Genbei's interest sharpened immediately. What did it look like? Jūnosuke described the Sakakibara crest, the workmanship, the thickness. Genbei asked. Solid? I don't know. Otsune answered from the bedding. It was heavier than it looked. Genbei turned. How much heavier? How should I know? You carried it for 7 years. Otsune considered. Enough that I noticed. Genbei sat down. Your father worked with records. Jūnosuke nodded. He knew he was investigating men above him. Yes, he may have prepared something outside the grain office. Then why hide it in a ring? Because houses are searched. Genbei looked toward Otsune, and servants are ignored. Otsune did not like the implication, but she could not deny it. Jūnosuke asked, if something is inside, why did my mother not tell Otsune? Genbei answered immediately. Because what someone does not know cannot be forced from them. The room fell quiet. Otsune looked down at her hands. For years she had thought Lady Shino trusted her with a family keepsake. Perhaps Shino had trusted her with something more dangerous. Jūnosuke stood. Then we need the ring. Genbei nodded. Yes, Otsune looked between them. No. Neither man answered. She pointed at Genbei. You are too old to encourage stupidity. I agree. Good. So we should do it carefully. Otsune closed her eyes. I dislike you, I know. They watched Mizuno's compound for 2 days. No swords, no heroic charge. No plan based on luck. Genbei insisted on that. Mizuno kept confiscated valuables in a small record room behind the main office. The ring would probably be there. The problem was not getting inside the compound. Servants, petitioners, merchants, fishermen and laborers entered every day. The problem was reaching the record room. Jūnosuke found the answer in Mizuno's own greed. A merchant vessel was due to leave the island on the following evening. Before departure, its cargo had to be inspected. Mizuno never delegated inspections when there was money to collect. At dusk, he would be at the harbor. Most of his senior men would be with him. Genbei arranged the rest. Before they separated, he handed Jūnosuke a folded levy packet. If you find proof strong enough to survive Mizuno's denial, leave this with the outer clerk. Jūnosuke looked at the packet, and then, I have already sent word to men in the domain who have been waiting for evidence they can act on. The packet is the signal. You trust them? I trust them to prefer documented theft to unexplained embarrassment. Jūnosuke tucked the packet beneath his robe. Genbei added, do not signal them for suspicion, only for proof. You will have little time. How little? Enough if nothing goes wrong. And if something does, Genbei looked at him. Less. The rain began just before sunset. That helped. People hurried. Heads stayed lowered. No one wanted to stand outside longer than necessary. At the harbor, Mizuno's men argued with the ship's master over an invented inspection fee. Genbei was there too, dressed as a merchant's clerk. He had spent the afternoon making certain the argument would be complicated. Jūnosuke entered the compound carrying a bundle of copied levy forms. No one stopped him at the outer gate. They knew his face. That was both useful and dangerous. He crossed the courtyard. One clerk sat in the main office. Jūnosuke bowed. Documents from the northern hamlet. Leave them. They require Mizuno-sama's seal. He is at the harbor. I know, the clerk sighed. Then why bring them now? Because the village headman said if I returned without submitting them, he would send me back in the rain. The clerk looked outside. Rain hammered the roof. He understood. Leave them. Jūnosuke placed the bundle down, then waited. The clerk frowned. What receipt? For what, to prove I delivered them? The clerk muttered something about troublesome villagers, then turned to find the receipt book. Jūnosuke moved. Not toward the door, toward the corridor behind the office. By the time the clerk turned back, Jūnosuke was gone. The record room was locked. Of course it was. Jūnosuke stared at the door. He had expected a latch. Genbei had expected a latch. They had both been wrong. Footsteps sounded somewhere behind him. Jūnosuke looked around. No place to hide. Then he saw a narrow opening above the partition. He climbed onto a storage chest, pulled himself up. The old wood groaned. He froze. The footsteps stopped, then continued. Jūnosuke squeezed through the gap. His shoulder caught. For one unpleasant moment, he imagined Otsune learning he had been arrested because he became stuck halfway through a wall. She would survive her injuries simply to kill him herself. He pushed harder, dropped, landed inside. Pain shot through his ankle. He waited. No alarm. Jūnosuke stood. Shelves covered the walls. Bundles of records, confiscated goods, a sword, 2 lacquer boxes, 3 purses. He began searching, not wildly. That was the old Jūnosuke. He started with the inventory labels. Mizuno's men recorded everything they took. Even the thieves loved paperwork when it made theft official. 3rd shelf, household valuables. He opened the ledger, found the year, found Otsune's name. His finger moved across the entry, 1 metal ring bearing former Sakakibara crest. Storage mark, B4. Jūnosuke looked at the shelves, B4th box. He opened it. There it was. For several seconds he did nothing. He had last seen the ring in Otsune's hand. He remembered shouting at her. You had one thing she trusted you with. He remembered her answer. If I had to choose again between her ring and your books, I would make the same choice. Jūnosuke picked it up. Mother. The word came more easily now. Then he put the ring inside his robe. He could have left, he did not. Because on the shelf beside the confiscated goods ledger sat another book, a grain account. Current year. Jūnosuke opened it. His heartbeat quickened. Boat names, quantities, losses, the same pattern, the same hooked numbers, the same false transport deductions. The warehouse had burned. But Mizuno had kept a private working ledger. Of course he had. A man stealing grain still needed to know how much he had stolen. Jūnosuke pulled paper from his sleeve. He began copying. He copied only what mattered: the boat, the date, the amount, the merchant, and the destination. He did not copy everything, only the entries that matched Genbei's records. That was enough. Footsteps approached. Jūnosuke kept writing. 1 more line. The door opened. Mizuno Heizo stood there, wet from the rain. 2 guards behind him. Jūnosuke slowly lowered the brush. Mizuno looked at the open ledger, then at him. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Mizuno sighed. You really do not learn. Jūnosuke folded the copied sheet. I learned. Mizuno stepped inside. From the look of things, not enough. No, Jūnosuke put the paper inside his robe. I learned why you burned the warehouse. Mizuno's eyes changed. There, fear, it was small but real. You wrote those records twice, Jūnosuke said. 1 set for the domain. Mizuno glanced at the private ledger, and 1 so you would know how much rice you actually sold. Give me the paper. No. Mizuno laughed. You have no idea what you are touching. I know the name Kuroda Genzaimon. The laughter stopped. That was all Jūnosuke needed. Mizuno's face answered before his mouth could. Jūnosuke continued. He arranged the same scheme 20 years ago. Be quiet. My father discovered it. Be quiet. So Kuroda made my father the thief. Mizuno struck him. Jūnosuke hit the shelf. The ring slipped from inside his robe. It struck the floor. Mizuno saw it. His eyes widened. What is that? He lunged. Jūnosuke grabbed it first. Mizuno seized his wrist. The 2 men struggled. The ring fell again. This time Mizuno's boot came down on it. A sharp crack. Both men stopped. The metal casing split. Something thin slid across the floor. It was not gold or a jewel. It was paper. Jūnosuke stared. So did Mizuno. Then both moved. Jūnosuke reached it first. Mizuno kicked him hard in the ribs. Jūnosuke rolled, but he kept the paper. Take it! The guards rushed forward. Jūnosuke unfolded the tiny strip. The writing was faded. Old, but readable. There was a date, a storehouse reference, Masanobu's name, and the seal of a senior domain official who had died years earlier. Jūnosuke read the first lines. His hands began to shake. It was not a confession. It was better, a receipt. proof that Sakakibara Masanobu had formally submitted a report concerning missing relief grain. The date was 11 days before the prosecution claimed he had begun stealing it himself. His father had reported the crime before he was accused of committing it. And the reference number pointed to another copy, a report that had once existed inside the domain administration. Mizuno saw Jūnosuke understand. "Give me that." Jūnosuke stood. "You knew. I know nothing about your father. You knew the name Kuroda." Mizuno drew his sword. The room became very quiet. Jūnosuke looked at the blade. 20 years of anger rose inside him. For 1 second he wanted a sword of his own. Then he remembered Otsune lying across his hand. "The last time my body pays for your anger." Jūnosuke did not attack. He stepped backward. Mizuno smiled. "Clever boy." "No." Jūnosuke looked toward the open door. "Just finally patient." A whistle sounded outside. Then another. Mizuno turned. Shouting erupted in the courtyard. Not villagers. Men organized, armed. The guards at the door looked at one another. Mizuno's face drained. "What did you do?" Jūnosuke smiled. "I delivered Genbei's packet." Genbei entered the courtyard behind 6 domain retainers. He was no longer dressed like a merchant's clerk. For the first time since Otsune had met him, he wore a sword. Mizuno emerged from the record room holding his blade against Jūnosuke. "Stay back!" Genbei stopped. His eyes went to Jūnosuke, then the paper in his hand. "You found it." Jūnosuke raised the strip, and his private ledger. Mizuno pressed the sword closer. "That proves nothing." Genbei looked at him. "Then you should have no objection to our reading it." Mizuno said nothing. Genbei continued. "Nor to explaining why your warehouse burned the morning after a former clerk agreed to testify." Silence, or where that clerk is. Mizuno's hand trembled. The retainers saw it. Genbei saw it. Jūnosuke felt it against his neck. Then a voice came from the gate. "Hachibei is alive." Everyone turned. 2 retainers entered. Between them walked Hachibei, bruised, one eye swollen. "Alive." Jūnosuke stared. Genbei allowed himself the smallest smile. "We found him in a fishing shed owned by one of Mizuno's men." Mizuno's sword lowered slightly. That was enough. A retainer moved. The sword hit the ground. Mizuno was forced to his knees. Jūnosuke stood very still. No triumph came, not yet. He looked at the broken ring in his palm. For the first time in 20 years, his father's case had somewhere to go, back into the records. The investigation lasted months. That surprised Jūnosuke. He had imagined truth once found would move quickly. It did not. Truth had to be copied, compared, sealed, and witnessed. It had to be sent upward, returned with questions, and sent again. Genbei warned him, "This is how institutions protect themselves. By moving slowly, sometimes, and the rest, by hoping you become tired." Jūnosuke did not, neither did Genbei. Hachibei testified. Mizuno's private ledger matched the copied shipping records. Merchants were questioned. Old grain office documents were reopened. And deep inside the domain archives, officials found the reference named on the paper from Lady Shino's ring. The original report itself was gone, but its registration entry remained. Submitted by Sakakibara Masanobu. Missing relief grain. Request for investigation. 11 days before Masanobu was accused. Then another record surfaced. A transfer authorized by Kuroda Genzaimon. Then another. The case that had destroyed the Sakakibara family began to reverse itself line by line. Kuroda was an old man now, powerful, respected. He denied everything. Then investigators showed him the records. He blamed dead clerks. They showed him seals. He blamed Masanobu. They showed him the registration date. Finally, one of Kuroda's former subordinates confessed. The scheme had been simple. Relief rice was diverted and sold. False transport losses hid part of the shortage. When Masanobu discovered the discrepancies, forged records made him responsible for them. The money planted in his office completed the story. A dead man could not defend himself, and for 20 years that had been enough. Not anymore. The official notice arrived on a cold morning. Jūnosuke was repairing the house roof. Otsune stood below shouting instructions. "You are doing it wrong. You cannot see the roof from there." "I can see you. That is not the same thing. It is enough." A rider appeared on the road. Both stopped. The man wore domain colors. Jūnosuke climbed down, the official dismounted. Sakakibara Jūnosuke. Jūnosuke had not heard the full name spoken formally in years. Yes. The official handed him a sealed document. Jūnosuke did not open it immediately. His fingers would not cooperate. Otsune came closer. Read it. He looked at her. You read everything else. He broke the seal. The document was formal, dry, almost painfully ordinary. It stated that the conviction of Sakakibara Masanobu had been found to rest upon falsified evidence. His name was cleared. The confiscation of the Sakakibara house was judged improper. Jūnosuke's status as the son of a condemned offender was revoked. The household name could be restored. Jūnosuke read the lines again, then again. Otsune waited. Well, he tried to speak, nothing came. She took the document from him, looked at it, then remembered she could not read enough of it. She shoved it back. Do not stand there making faces. Tell me. Jūnosuke laughed. It came out broken. He was innocent. Otsune stopped. Jūnosuke's eyes filled. They cleared him. Otsune covered her mouth. For years she had imagined this moment. In none of those imaginings had she known what to do with her hands. Jūnosuke looked toward the sea. My father was innocent. This time he said it loudly. This time he did not say it like a child fighting other children, or an angry young man challenging Mizuno. He said it as a fact, recorded, sealed, and recognized. Otsune reached for him. Jūnosuke was taller now, so she pulled his head down and held it against her shoulder anyway. For once he did not complain. They returned to the mainland the following spring. Jūnosuke stood at the rail of the boat. Otsune sat behind him. You were less impressive the first time. He turned. What? You vomited for half the journey. I was 7. You complained that the sea was killing you. I do not remember that. I do. You remember everything embarrassing. It is one of the rewards of motherhood. The word slipped out. Otsune froze. So did Jūnosuke. She looked away quickly. Jūnosuke smiled. Neither corrected it. The Sakakibara residence was not returned exactly as it had been. Part had been sold. One storehouse had collapsed. The garden was smaller. Several rooms belonged to another family and would remain theirs. Jūnosuke did not care. He stood outside the gate. 20 years earlier, he had left it holding Otsune's hand. Now she stood beside him. Do you remember? She asked. Some what? The soldiers. Otsune waited. My mother. Another pause. You. He looked at her. You told them I was your son. Otsune looked embarrassed. I was angry. You threatened a samurai with your bare hands. That was foolish. Yes, she frowned. Jūnosuke smiled. Thank you. Word of the restoration spread. So did relatives. They arrived within a week. An uncle Jūnosuke barely remembered. 2 cousins. A distant aunt who claimed she had prayed for him every day for 20 years. Otsune listened from the adjoining room. The uncle spoke warmly. Whatever happened in the past, blood is blood. Jūnosuke nodded. Yes, the uncle relaxed. Exactly. Jūnosuke looked through the open partition. Otsune was kneeling beside a chest, pretending not to listen. He turned back, which is why I know exactly who my family is. The uncle's smile faded. Jūnosuke bowed politely. I wish you a safe journey home. It was not the reunion they had expected. It was, however, short. Otsune approved. A few days later, a household servant approached Jūnosuke. Only 3 servants worked there now. Jūnosuke preferred it that way. My lord, yes, the nurse's room has been prepared. Jūnosuke looked up. The nurse? Otsune. Jūnosuke followed him. The servant had prepared a small room near the rear. It was clean, warm, and perfectly respectable for an old household attendant. Otsune had already placed her bundle inside. Jūnosuke stood in the doorway. What are you doing? Otsune looked up. Unpacking. Why? Because that is generally what one does after moving. This is not your room. She looked around. It has my belongings in it. Move them. Otsune stared. Yun. He picked up her bundle. Come. Where? He walked away. Otsune followed, complaining. Naturally, he led her through the inner corridor, past the room that had once belonged to his father, past the small garden, then stopped before a larger room facing the morning light. He opened the door. Otsune stared. No. Yes. No. Why did you follow me if you planned to refuse? To stop you doing something foolish. You are late by 20 years. Otsune stepped backward. This is an inner family room. I know. I am a servant. Jūnosuke looked at her. No. The answer was so simple that she stopped. He entered the room, then knelt. Otsune's eyes widened. What are you doing? Jūnosuke reached inside his sleeve. He took out a small box. Inside lay a ring. It was simple silver with no crest on the outside and no jewels. Otsune stared at it. I could not repair Lady Shino's ring. Jūnosuke lifted the new one, so I had this made. Otsune shook her head. I do not need jewelry. I know. Then why waste money? Because you taught me badly. What? You spent 20 years buying things for me that you could not use yourself. Otsune opened her mouth, then closed it. Jūnosuke smiled. Now it is my turn. He placed the ring in her palm. There is nothing hidden inside this one. Otsune looked at him. No secret? No. No evidence? No, then what is it for? Jūnosuke turned the ring slightly. Inside, where no one would see unless they looked closely, was a tiny engraving. Otsune could recognize only one part. The Sakakibara crest. Jūnosuke said, It carries my family name. Otsune's fingers closed. She shook her head. I cannot accept this. You already did. I mean the room. You already entered. I can walk out. Jūnosuke stood. Otsune did not move. He looked at the woman before him, the woman who had buried her own child, then fed him with the milk meant for that child. The woman who had stood between him and a sword, walked into exile when she was free to leave, and carried him when his feet bled. She had lied about eating so he could eat, cut her hands gathering shellfish, and bought books she could not read. She had surrendered his mother's ring because she believed his future mattered more than the past, and placed her body over his hand. When his anger nearly destroyed everything she had built, Jūnosuke had spent most of his life trying to restore the name his father had given him. Only now did he understand that another person had given him something just as important, the life in which to carry it. Otsune lowered her eyes. You have your name back now. Yes, you have your house. Yes, you do not need an old nurse following you anymore. Jūnosuke looked at her. 20 years ago, an official told you that you were free to leave. Otsune remembered the ruined courtyard, the dead. A frightened 7-year-old boy, then write my name beside his. Jūnosuke continued, You stayed. Her eyes filled. So now I am telling you. He held out his hand. You are free to stay. Otsune laughed through her tears. That is a terrible invitation. I learned from you. She looked at his hand. For a moment, Jūnosuke saw the woman who had stood outside another room 20 years earlier, unable to enter because the crying of a stranger's baby reminded her of the son she had buried. Then Otsune placed her hand in his. Jūnosuke closed his fingers around it. Mother. She looked up. This time there was no punishment block, no shouting, no pain. He said it slowly, clearly, so there could be no doubt that she had heard. Come home. Otsune looked past him into the room, across the threshold, then she stepped inside.